What's the worst HR is not your friend story you've witnessed/experienced? Story 1. HR hired consultants to run morale-building employee input sessions, basically saying, "We're not from the company. You can tell us all the things you don't like about working here and would like to see changes, and we'll put it all into a report for management. Don't worry, everything is anonymous. We just need material for our report, and you guys get to have your say in improving things around here." Turns out HR and the consultants recorded all the sessions and played the highlights for management. People were disciplined for criticizing the company or their immediate superiors, and any shred of faith or trust in management that the employees may have had was instantly incinerated. Managers now complain that they don't know what's going on in their teams because nobody tells them anything. I wonder why. Story 2. At my last real job before striking out on my own, I had an exit interview with the HR lady, who was actually just someone who was friends with the company president who was filling in because the actual HR lady with a degree in HR and everything quit. A lot of people at this place quit. It was a terrible place to work with out-of-touch management and delusions of grandeur limping along building websites for a business niche that was mostly old people who thought the internet was magic. During the exit interview, she asked why I was leaving. I told her I liked my coworkers a lot, but hated the company. She got this exasperated look and got genuinely upset and told me that she'd been getting that same line from everybody else who quit and had their exit interview recently. It boggles my mind that they could hear the same thing over and over again from so many people putting in their time until they could go on to something better and not stop to think they should change something. Story 3. I asked my boss for a desk phone with a speakerphone function because sometimes I needed at work to conference people on the phone with people in my office. We had these old yellow phones, so he told me to make a request to him and CC our office manager, and he'd send it to the HR department of our region via email. So I put forth a nice email outlining what I am requesting and why I need it for HR's request. My office manager replies all and asks HR, per Lazarus 870 request, should I order the phone through the same channels I have used before, or is there a new policy? HR responded livid. She demanded to know why I needed this phone. It was in the email. And then accused my office manager of going behind HR's back and ordering phones without approval. My office manager told my boss, who called HR and chewed her out, and I could hear yelling. My boss came out of his office and yelled at me, "See what you've caused." He was fired up, but I know he didn't mean anything malicious by it. I just laughed. HR had to apologize to the office manager for the accusations. Turns out, after everybody yelled their fucking lungs out for an hour, the speakerphone I needed was literally free, and we had boxes of them in storage. I had it for a month before HR rolled out new fancy phones that were actually expensive and convoluted, requiring training to set up and use. At the company picnic, we had to wear fucking name tags, and I had never met HR lady face to face, and she came up and said, "Oh, we haven't met. What's your name?" And I was trying to hide my name tag, but she read it and didn't seem happy to see me. Story 4. I worked in the bakery at a Fred Meyer's for about 6 months when I was freshly 19. There was this 45-year-old guy in meat/seafood who was super creepy, and all of the women in my department, and even one woman who was previously in my department, but was moved to another, 2 away from him, warned me about this man from day one. Somehow, any time I was on my break, he would be on his break too, and he'd follow me into the break room and try to flirt with me the entire time. Not only did he follow me on my breaks and lunches, but if I had to walk to another part of the store to get anything, he would run to catch up to me and walk with me. He followed me to my car a few times after I got off shift, and the scariest time was when I was closing by myself and he came into the back of the bakery and kept following me around the long table, trying to grab me while telling me how much he liked me and how badly he wanted to be with me. I told him no and to leave me alone constantly, while managers just shrugged and said, "That's just how he is." My boyfriend threatened him when he got off work one time. Hell, even my father came in and threatened him because no one was doing anything. The final straw for me was one night when I was closing alone again. He came into the back area and followed me into the freezer and tried to kiss me, and he grabbed my ass. I pushed him and fucking ran to the closing manager, who also functioned as HR. He said he'd watched the store footage and talked to me the next day. Next day comes, and he pulls me into his office and says that he saw the video and saw this man stalking me inside and outside of work, and that he talked to him about his behavior, to which the man responded that it was just a misunderstanding. I replied that this had been going on for months and I wasn't going to take it anymore, and he had the fucking nerve to tell me that he just does this to all the new girls. As soon as another girl gets hired, he'll leave me alone. I told him he was a bastard and quit on the spot. Turns out the creep was the brother of the store's owner, who had been to jail in the past for sexual assault and rape, but was now cleaning his life up. Story 5. Office Survey. I put in some honest opinions of a member of my team. They were fair and honest criticisms of a system which was not working as designed. I had little contact with the system, but the whole thing seemed reasonable to me. I was, in effect, demoted for this. A position was created above me, and a colleague who was my equal was to be my manager. Position did not exist before. This happened the same week my husband died, and the management felt like shit because of the timing. But still, on my return to work, I was basically called out for criticizing the same system in a whole company meeting, and it was explained how the X system should and did work, and anyone who thought it didn't work was stupid. Cut to 2 years later. Person above me quit, partly because they're scared to tell the company that anything's gone wrong because of how I was treated, and they have to promote me to that position because it now exists according to the rules, and I'm the only one who can do it. Again, in a whole company meeting, they admit X system isn't working, and we're having a consultation to find out why. I laughed. I couldn't help it. I had to leave the room before it turned into hysteria. Story 6. Worked in HR for a time, and it soured my view of HR more than any stories I'd heard. One incident that stands out in my memory was a young casual worker who accused her boss of sexual harassment. I dutifully brought it up the chain, but the higher-ups did not care if the boss had done anything or not. The cost of not giving her any more hours was zero, so that's what they did. That's just one case that I dealt with, but you'd see it on a daily basis. There were literally pop-up notifications on the phone calls and emails from people deemed too high up to refuse. You're a part-time employee who's done everything right, hasn't been paid in 2 months, and can't make rent. Ooh, shit, out of luck. Nothing we can do. Meanwhile, their boss who forgot to put in a timesheet. Of course, sir. Expedited payment, sir, will be in your account by close of business, sir. HR is there to protect the business. You want protection. Join a union. Story 7. The company I work for does anonymous surveys every year. My first 2 years I was under this horrible manager and in a terrible department. While the surveys were anonymous, they were broken down per manager, which is fine, but my manager had 3 people under him, and it was easy to determine who was who. At a department meeting, the associate director said, "If the person who isn't happy wants to say something, now is the time, or we will just move on." 30 people were in that room, and most of them looked at me. It was so fucking embarrassing. My manager used to make me use an Excel sheet to track everything I did, and he would look over it during our weekly one-on-ones, and he would often say there is 20 minutes of your day not accounted for. I was probably shitting or talking to someone, but I needed to account for every minute. He also could barely speak English and wanted me to help him and correct him. Fuck that. That's not my job. Luckily, he was taken out of a manager position, and the department was split up. And now I'm in a new role, making twice as much under a manager who is amazing and understanding. Recently, I had COVID and went out. After 5 sick days, your manager needs to put in for you to get short-term disability. So I signed on the 6th day, so that wouldn't happen. And I told my boss I was logged on, so that wouldn't happen. And he got mad at me and said don't even worry about that, I'm not reporting it. If he ever leaves, I'm following him. Story 8. One of our departments shut down at noon thanks to a HVAC issue. Building management needed to move cubicles and pull out a chunk of drop ceiling. So the manager took them all out to the bar for a team building exercise. Everyone in the department arrived the next morning to a final notice in lieu of termination on their desk that cited drinking on the job and time theft. The manager had an extra special third for improper use of a company credit card. None of what they'd done was against company policy, so the manager's boss, a vice president, called HR and told them to back whatever newbie had written them the hell off. HR instead forwarded over a brand new policy manual and told the VP to make sure all the write-ups were signed and returned by the end of day. VP goes up the chain to his boss, the CEO. The CEO hadn't even seen it, let alone authorized it. HR doesn't want to back down, even when the CEO calls them. Sure, he hadn't authorized it, but he had asked them to consider revamping it back in March. This was the glorious revamp. They'd gone back to square one and completely rewritten it. It's full of best practices, industry standard rules, and easy-to-understand language. Oh, and they'd been enforcing it since May, so it would probably be best for him to just sign off on it, and any concerns he found could be incorporated in a future revision. Yeah, no. The CEO didn't make it past the first page before finding a contract law violation. Page 3 had a federal labor law violation. Page 4 would make the NLRB angry, and the section on PTO would get them sued 6 ways to Sunday. The head of HR was asked to resign. When she refused, she was fired. Story 9. Mine was a job where I was working in HR, getting screwed over by HR. I was coming into a job that I was overqualified for, but took it for the same salary as my last job because A, I hated my previous job and wanted an out. B, I really liked what the company did, railroad industry, my dream come true. And C, because they said they couldn't offer me more, and it was already more than what they could offer. I was the it guy for HR, and one day, about 7 months in, they asked me to pull a list of everyone that left the HR department in the last year. The list only consisted of 3 people. One was my predecessor. When I pull info from their database, it automatically brings in a lot of their HR info that I'm supposed to remove prior to sending it elsewhere in the company, which includes salary. They had been paying my predecessor, who was less qualified than I was, $20,000 more than myself. I was also driving over 90 minutes to slash from work every day for this job, because it was a dream of mine to work in the railroading industry. I had a new job within a few weeks, only a half hour away from home. Story 10. Coworker accidentally backed his company truck into my personal car while it was parked. He alerted me and our local manager immediately. We took photos, filled out the incident report, yada yada yada. Everyone in our office was in agreement about what happened, that it was an honest accident, and the company's insurance should cover the cost of fixing my car. Then the HR director got involved. First, he tried to get me to assume liability since it was my personal vehicle that caused the accident. My car was parked in the parking lot, and I was inside at my desk when it happened. When I pointed this out, he backed down and said he would file the claim. Next, I got a call from a hostile insurance adjuster from my company's insurance demanding that I provide my insurance information, or they would be pursuing legal action. It turns out the HR director had filed the claim saying that I had run into the parked work truck with my car and tried to flee the scene but was witnessed by a coworker who reported me. I informed the adjuster what had actually happened and emailed her the photos and signed incident reports and witness statements that we had filled out, and she changed her tune pretty quickly and said she would get back to me. The next day, I got a settlement agreement from HR asking me to accept $1,100 for repairs and to sign a form releasing the company from any further responsibility. I had only just dropped my car off at the body shop and hadn't even gotten the estimate back yet. I declined and was told that I either had to accept their offer or be out of luck. At this point, I reached out to my own insurance and told them what had happened. As I went through the sequence of events, I could hear my agent getting almost giddy about all the blatantly illegal tactics HR had tried on me. In the end, they processed my claim and pursued my own company's insurance through subrogation. He also mentioned that they would probably be seeking additional damages due to falsification of statements in the initial claim. Don't fuck with USA. In the end, the damage ended up costing over $4,000 to fix, but I didn't have to pay a cent, not even my deductible. I don't know if the HR director experienced any consequences, but there was a comment in our finance VP's year-end report about needing to reduce extraneous costs due to reporting delays and inaccuracies in liability claims.